All right, then. This is Prophet Row A, not B, signing in, saying shalom. I want to get right into this. And what I want to do is share my screen. No, I don't want to share my screen. I'm just going to play the audio. But you got to hear this, y'all. It's interesting that I was talking about Marianne Williamson earlier today, and I stumbled upon a video that Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, they actually got an interview with Marianne Wilson. I'm impressed. I'm really impressed because they're just an internet show. So it looks like Marianne Williamson, she's being way more aggressive than all the other candidates. She's going out to media that's on the internet, YouTube channels. Wow. And she's starting early. No other candidate is doing that. Now, I know, people are going on to Charlemagne's show. That's one thing. But to go to the internet and go on somebody's YouTube channel and you're a presidential candidate? You're looking for the Democratic nomination for presidency? That's wow, that is amazing. She got my attention. She got my attention by the fact that she offered us $100 billion. And now she's got my attention because and let me tell you something. Marianne Williamson has the largest internet following of all Democratic presidential candidates. And I would argue probably larger than any Republican candidate either. So she's entrenched in the internet. She's entrenched. This lady is aggressive. She's not making the type of blunders that some of these other candidates are making. But without further ado, I want to get right into this. And we're going to, maybe I should show the video. No, I'm not going to show the video. But I am going to play the audio. All right, then. Let's see here. Okay. That's Democratic presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. Okay. That's her right there. So what I'm going to do is going to get my audio all, get it on fleek so y'all can hear it. But I'm not going to play the video on the screen share. You're just going to see her picture. We're going to play the audio from another source. Just bear with me here. Just bear with me here. Hey, Kenyon, how you doing? Shalom. I'll be with y'all in a minute. I'm just trying to get this audio up and running. Now, last week, presidential candidate Marianne Williams spoke to Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell. This missed me. This totally missed me. So here you have a presidential candidate goes to somebody's YouTube channel. Now this lady, I want to tell you that I don't like her $100 billion plan. I still don't like it. But I'm going to tell you something about this lady. This lady is doing stuff that people, most presidential candidates wouldn't even think about doing. Now, this is more than a radio show. This is a podcast. This lady has went to a podcast to be interviewed by Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell. You can't see Yvette Carnell there because she's on the phone. She's definitely got my attention in more ways than one. No, I'm not voting, but I'm just saying. I mean, this lady, I'm really wondering, because I know how Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell carry themselves. And I really wish Yvette was here so I could see her face, so I could really discern her. But I know how Antonio Moore acts when he have other guests. I want to see if he's going to be the same Antonio Moore with a white lady in here who's a presidential candidate. I want to see what type of questions he's going to ask her. I want to see if he's going to go bare knuckles with this lady, or he just going to throw her softballs. I'm just saying, y'all. A lot of us don't be keeping it real when we get around white people. We change everything. We change our tone. We change our speech pattern. We change the way we stand. We change the way we talk just because we're around a white person. I'm just saying, y'all. I'm just saying. No shade. I'm just saying. I ain't trying to hurt nobody. I ain't trying to beef. I'm just saying. I know how black people get when they get around white people. I'm just saying. So we're going to get this thing started here.
10 years ago, they arrived. Promised us a future. They gonna take everything. I've got a plan. And that will spark a revolution. Captain State, WG-15.
That need to be addressed in order to move us forward. So I think just like we have holistic health, we need a holistic politics. We need to talk about more than the symptoms. We need to talk about the causes of our deep diseases.
I agree. I mean, I've watched a couple of discussions with you, and I have to say we've seen powerful things coming out of you. One of the things that brought you to the table.
Now, with this interview that Antonio has with this lady, Antonio has with this lady, I want to see if he mentions anything about her that he don't like. Because I noticed that our people, you know, they could talk a big game behind white people's back, but when they were standing face to face with people, they got a whole nother song that they're singing. I'm just saying.
Such a big way for Black America, of course, was that you started off your campaign announcing that we needed to deal with reparations. Now, we'll deal in the second question with the amount. But I asked you today, I guess, you decided to run for president by announcing you were for slavery reparations, for American DOS, for American descendants of slavery. Why? Why that? Why did you start there?
My career over the last 35 years has been a field of transformation. And the same psychological and emotional and spiritual forces that prevail within the journey of an individual prevail within the journey of a nation, because all that a country is a group of individuals. So if you really want to change your life, you need to get straight with God. You need to really address in a very honest and self-aware way.
Now, one thing I want to say about this lady, she is a very spiritual and religious person. So she will freely talk about God. She will freely talk about the Bible. Hey, what's going on, Hadassah? Hey, okay, Kenyan Design, I'm going to do that. I want to check it out. Thank you in advance, whatever it is. I appreciate it. Look at this, y'all. Now, what we're doing here, Hadassah, is that I saw that there was a video that Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell did, and guess who they were interviewing? Marianne Williamson, presidential candidate.
From
Hold on a second. Hello? No, thank you. Okay. So, yeah, they got an interview on a YouTube channel with a presidential candidate. I have to say, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. And I'm curious too. I'm impressed and curious because I always want to know the motive behind what's happening. Is it spectacular? Yes, it is. But I don't get taken in by the spectacle of stuff. I want to know why stuff is happening. Why is this lady on Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell's YouTube channel, and she's a presidential candidate? So I got way more questions in my mind. And I have to tell you, I'm apprehensive. Let me just say it that way. I'm very apprehensive. Because a lot of people would say a presidential candidate going on a YouTube channel to have an interview is going to the bottom of the barrel. So she definitely got my attention. She definitely got my attention. Now I want to see what she really about. Because even though Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell are not Israelites, I don't know what their religious stand is. I think they atheists, to be quite frank with you. Or at best Christians, So we don't hold the same worldview, but they are the people that's closest to the community that I live in and that I reach out to. So because she is doing, and not only that, I subscribe to Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell's YouTube channel. So that puts Marianne Williamson in close proximity to me in a proxy sort of way, if you follow me. Okay? Now, I don't subscribe to the Breakfast Club. I just stumble upon them every now and then. I've never subscribed to the Breakfast Club and never would. And I've never been a hip hop head anyway. I've never been a hip hop enthusiast anyway. Not that there are no hip hop songs that I don't like, but I'm not like that, you know. I never was deep in that hip hop culture like that, no way. So I would never subscribe to a channel like the Breakfast Club. And I take offense of somebody calling themselves Charlemagne the God, you know, looking at the way he carries himself. But anyway, I digress.
Where you're not who you might say you are, where you have character defects. And I think athlete going to confession or a Jew on Yom Kippur.
That was edited because it jumped. They edited this because it jumped. I want to play that over.
Want to change your life. You need to get straight with God. You need to really address in a very honest and self-aware way where you're not who you might say you are, where you have character defects. And I think athlete going to confession or a Jew.
Yeah, they cut it. They cut it. Now, let me tell you something, y'all. I'm going to tell you me lower my guard with Caucasian people. I'm going to give you a recipe. Now, I know this. Don't judge me yet. First, hear me out before you wait. I want to show you what will help me lower my guard with certain type of Caucasian people. First, they got to acknowledge us as who we really are, which is God's chosen people. And they have to acknowledge what their people and the rest of the world has done to us. The third thing, if they made a plea to us to repent to our God so we can get back at the top of the earth, that would have me take some Caucasian people, certain kind of Caucasian people, seriously. The day that we see a Caucasian person telling us to repent, pleading with us to repent, not demanding, but pleading with us to repent to our God so the earth could get back in order, I could take a Caucasian person like that very seriously. Anybody hearing me? Anybody hearing me? Does this sound like I'm cooning? Does this sound like a little coon show? Do it sound like I need some butter biscuits? Do it sound like I got on tap shoes? Do it sound like I'm soft shoeing? You feel me, right, Kenyon? See, let me tell you something. When people that are not Israelites and they are heathen and they come to us and they plead with us to get back to our God so we can be rulers over the whole earth. And on top of that, they acknowledge to repair us. They repent to us for what they have done to us. And they make tangible efforts to show that they are really sorry. That's a Caucasian person I could get along with. That's a Spanish person I could get along with. Because, see, a person like that, guess what they're going to be willing to do? They're going to be willing to give you the hookup. They're going to be willing to give you job training. They're going to be able to willing to give you loans without interest. They're going to be willing to, hey, pay your children's schooling, dental, health care. Oh, I can get along with a Caucasian person like that. Black people won't even do that for each other. Hello. Black people don't even plead with each other to repent, because the first thing a black person going to say is, you judging. But if a Caucasian person comes to me in the spirit of meekness and humility and say, hey, you know, you're one of the God's chosen people. You know the reason why the world is out of whack because you're not at the top anymore and because you won't repent. That's a message I can embrace. And you know what? My people, and they tell a Caucasian person, they tell me, you know what? We really abuse y'all. And we don't even supposed to be at the top anyway. But the Most High just did it just because y'all got out of order. And so he put us at the top. We don't even supposed to be at the top. We only at the top just to get y'all in order. And so what I'm willing to do, I'm willing to bless the people of the Most High, like the Bible says in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. I will bless them that bless thee, curse thee that curse thee. We already know, and these Caucasian people say, and all the other nations too, Africans too, they say, you know what? We know we got our curses coming, but we want to have some blessings coming too. So what we want to start doing is blessing you. And we want to start repenting of what we would do. And we're going to tangibly repent by actually doing things to improve the righteous Israelites who are seeking first the kingdom. See, that's a message that I could get with. That's an African I could be friends with. That's an Edomite I could kick it with. That's an Edomite I could respect. Oh, you driving, Pamela? Be careful. Shalom to you, by the way. I can get with that. And I know some people are going to say that's cooning. No, that's not cooning. I don't know. Don't you know the Bible prophesies that that was going to happen anyway? Read Isaiah chapter 60. Hello. If I'm cooning right now, that means we got a whole chapter in the Bible, Isaiah chapter 60, where it's a whole bunch of cooning. Jeremiah chapter 30, whole bunch of cooning. Daniel chapter 2, whole bunch of cooning in that chapter. If this is cooning what I'm doing, that means the Bible is cooning. I must have learned it from the Bible. If this is soft shoe cooning, hey, y'all, they're going to have to pay us back one way or another. If it's not now, it's going to be later. So it don't really matter. Now, you can call it cooning if you want to. They're going to have to pay us back, y'all. There's going to be a day of recompense for them. So they might as well get used to it right now, before the four winds in Revelation chapter 7, 1 through 4 are loosed. You might as well do it now. Why put it off? They should start blessing us right now. Now, some of our people are not ready to be blessed, but our enemies should leave that in the Most High's hand. They should just bless us anyway. The good and the bad, the sheep and the goat, the rich and the poor, the wheat and the tares. They should just do their best to make recompense right now, before the wrath comes. Don't wait for the wrath to come to try to get everything right. Do it before the wrath comes. This is the type of message we should have for the other nations. Is it reparations? No. No, it's not a reparation. It's just a token. That's all. It's just a token. Are y'all with me? My best friend is a Caucasian, and she acknowledges who we are. She also follows the laws, statutes, and commandments. She's nearly 20 years older than me. Well, that's good. Hopefully she'll put you in her will too. Hopefully she's blessing your life right now. I'm talking about materially. That's a good thing, Kenyon. It's nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with that. Let me tell you something. The people that were our enemies, their offspring should be trying to be our best friends. So I promote that. They were our enemies, so why can't they? If they were our enemies and are our enemies as a nation, why can't some of them try to be our best friends? They should. If they knew what was coming, they would. And they shouldn't do it just because of fear of what's coming. They should do it just because they want to serve the Most High. They want to be good people. They want to be righteous, fair. They should do it just because of that, even if they don't even believe in the Most High. Y'all understand where I'm coming from? My husband said that's the story of Jonah right there. Let's play.
Which is the Day of Atonement, which is the holiest day of the year. Or in recovery, for instance, 12 step.
This lady talking about the Day of Atonement. I think this lady is angling towards Hebrew Israelites, y'all. I'm just saying, I haven't heard this. I'm listening to this with you, okay? I haven't heard this. I don't know. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know.
Where you have to take a serious moral inventory and admit your character defects and atone confession, or a Jew on Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, which is the holiest day of the year, or in recovery, for instance, 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, where you have to take a serious moral inventory and admit your character defects and atone for them and make amends.
Hey, y'all, ain't that what I just got through talking about? Ain't that what I just got through talking about? Our enemies making amends? She's talking about making amends in context to what? Reparations. It's interesting. It's interesting, y'all. My jury is still out. But this lady definitely got my attention. I had no idea she was on this show.
That's true for our nation as well. And I had read a proclamation by Abraham Lincoln in 1864, where he said that a nation must confess its sins. So I think clearly racism is a national character defect that has been with us since the beginning. And I am a student of history, and I believe that when it comes to race in America, and I think that this is significant for me, I don't think the average American is a racist, but I do think the average American is woefully undereducated about the history of race in America. And so much as the—
Okay, I have to say both. I would have to disagree with her there. She says she don't think that the average American is racist. Yes, they are. That's how this country was built. She just think that they are woefully ignorant. No, it's both. Ignorant and racist. It's both. It could be both. There's a duality here.
But much remains to be done. Much even that has been done is now coming undone. And it's time for our generation to write our chapter and do the next big thing, the next major piece that has to do with economic restitution that was never fully addressed in the past.
I totally understand. I mean, we here at the Tone Talks audience understand that the middle Black family in this country is worth $1,700 without depreciating the assets. Half of Black America combined is worth less than $1. This is all Federal Reserve numbers. Only a few 100,000 Black families even break $1 million, while 13 million white families are above $1 million. So the reality of the disparate spread of wealth between Blacks and whites is more than a problem. It's actually shut Black people out, ADOS people out of America. Yvette, any question you want to ask before I go into the second part?
No, go into the second part and I'll chime in.
So let me ask you, I guess when you announced the you said the amount of $100 billion. You know, since then, I believe William Darity, professor, has talked to you. Where did that number come from? And do you understand that number is entirely too low?
Yeah, I first started talking.
Now I have to take my hat off for Tone Talks. I have to take my hat off for Antonio Moore, because he's saying the same thing I was saying earlier. $100 billion is woefully way under the thing. And I didn't get a chance to go to her website and read the bullet points behind the logic of offering us $100 billion. So I may have made a premature judgment. I probably should have went to her website first and read about her reparation plan in detail before I made the video that I made earlier. But that's okay. I make mistakes. Sometimes I speak prematurely. But now she's sitting here with Antonio Moore, and guess what? He's putting that question to her. So now I'm going to be able to hear her more comprehensive answer behind why she came up with a number like $100 billion, when the Jews who went through the Holocaust, that fake Holocaust, by the way, they got $89 billion. So Now we get to hear her real answer. Y'all still with me in here? Are y'all still with me? So I'm glad so far it looks like Antonio Moore is staying true to form by telling her outright that 100 billion is way too low. You see? Hey, what's going on, Roz Blackwood? I've never seen you before. Welcome to the One Tough Guy channel. I'm Prophet Rohei Nabi. Thank you. Thank you. I'm hosting the channel, and we're just going over this interview that Tone Talks did with interview that he did with Marianne Williamson. Him and Yvette Carnell are interviewing her on their YouTube channel. So we're going to be able to really get into this. She's a very, very interesting presidential candidate. Very, very interesting. I'm not a voter, but she is interesting. I would never vote, but she's interesting nonetheless.
Reparation for slavery in a book I wrote in 1997. But at that time, I didn't say anything about numbers. And then when I first wrote an article about it, it's interesting because I see my own process and it's very, I learned from it. So when I first wrote about this.
Where did that number come from? And do you understand that number is entirely too low?
Yeah, I first started talking about reparation for slavery in a book I wrote in 1997. But at that time, I didn't say anything about numbers. And then when I first wrote an article about it, it's interesting because I see my own process and it's very, I learned from it. So when I first wrote about this, I said 500 billion. And then I got scared and I backed away from that. And I said, well, nobody will take me seriously, so I'll say 200 billion. And then when I spoke about it once publicly, I said, well, anything less than $1 billion would be an insult. And then I just stayed with that number. And I should have realized, once you're talking as someone seeking a nomination for president, you need to be very, very careful with your numbers. And I can see clearly that I wasn't. I knew that under 100 billion was an insult. That much I knew. But I certainly see that it's interesting to me because I think it's interesting that I originally wrote 5 and then went to 2 and then went to 1.
Yes, and so
scurried away from it.
And so when we look at this from the standpoint of academics, William Darity, he has the great paper, 40 Acres and a Mule in the 21st Century. You start to understand that this is a multi-trillion-dollar investment.
If you were, first of all, we can't put a dollar, when you're talking about lives of people.
Oh, wait a minute. I don't want to speak immaturely and I don't want to speak prematurely. But I don't want nobody telling me, I don't want none of my enemies telling me you can't put a dollar amount on human beings when they were in fact buying and selling us. No, you don't get to say that. That's an insult. Let me play. Is anybody listening with this to me? Is anybody listening to this with me, or am I by myself? I just want to know. No. You don't buy and sell us, and then after the thing is all over, then we tell you we want some money, and then you say, well, we can't put no dollar amount on it. No. Stop. No. Yes, it is true. It is true you can't put a dollar amount on it, but you can't be saying that after you done bought and sold us. That's for us to say. That's for us to determine. No. Now that we want some money that you owe us, now you're gonna tell us, no, well, you can't put no dollar amount on it. No. Let's play that again.
I'll say 200 billion. And then when I spoke about it once publicly, I said, well, anything less than $1 billion would be an insult. And then I just stayed with that number. And I should have realized, once you're talking as someone seeking a nomination for president, you need to be very, very careful with your numbers. And I can see clearly that I wasn't. I knew that under 100 billion was an insult. That much.
You should see the way Antonio Moore is looking at her. You really got to see this look. Let me see. You got to see this look that he's giving her. You got to see this look. It's priceless. I'm going to go to the minute marker and show you this look he got on his face. You got to see this look that he got on his face. Look at that look he got on his face.
I knew. But I certainly see that it's interesting to me, because I think it's interesting that I originally wrote 5 and then went to 2 and then went to 1.
Yeah, and so
scurried away from it.
So when we look at this from the standpoint of academics, William Darity, he has the great paper, 40 Acres and a Mule in the 21st Century. You start to understand that this is a multi-trillion-dollar investment.
If you were, first of all, we can't put a dollar, when you're talking about lives of people. But at the same time, I read a book once that said something very interesting. It said, the philosophy.
Now, this is so funny. It's funny, man. This is so funny. Now, somebody that stole all your money, caused your family to go into prostitution and thugging and all kind of stuff, and poverty and all kind of stuff, mass incarceration, and then you tell them that you want your money back, and then they say, well, how much money you want back? And you say $1 trillion. See, the reason why she's saying, the reason why this Caucasian lady is sitting here saying, she got sticker shock, y'all. When he said he said, this is $1 trillion investment. Then she starts talking this stuff about, well, you can't put no price on souls, on human beings. You know why she's saying that? Because she's scared as hell of $1 trillion. She thinks that that's too much. Now, I'm really looking for Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell to really go in on this lady. Let me play this again. Y'all not understanding what's going on here. I don't think y'all with me here. I think I'm by myself. He said $1 trillion. He said, this is $1 trillion investment. And then she answers with, you can't put a value on souls, on human beings. Now, she's the descendant of a group of people that bought and sold us. Now she all moral. Oh, come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. Let's don't fall for the okie doke, y'all. Let's don't fall for the okie doke. This is a beautiful interview. I like this. I'm liking this. Listen to what he says.
Paper, 40 Acres and a Mule in the 21st Century. You start to understand that this is a multi-trillion-dollar investment.
If you were, first of all, we can't put a dollar, when you're talking about lives of people. But at the same time, I read a book once that said something very
Oh boy, he scared the hell out of her when he said $1 trillion. Hey son, what's going on? How was your day? Good. Cause boy, I'm zen tight. Good, great. Oh, this is so funny. This is so funny. He mentioned $1 trillion and she like, oh, well, you can't put a Antonio Moore told I'm talking to my son now. He just walked in the door. Antonio Moore told this lady, her name is Marianne Williamson, and she's a presidential candidate. And she believes that black people should get reparations. And she said we should get $100 billion. Son, that's nothing. The Jews in the Holocaust, they got 89 billion. Just in World War II. Ours went on for hundreds of years and they got 89 billion, but we should only get 100 billion. So he told her, well, you know that number is very, very low, right? She said, yeah, you know, well, you got to hear it, son. You got to hear it. Look, listen. This is so funny. This is funny. Funny. This is so funny.
And then we'll do one.
Yes, but and so
scurried away from it.
So when we look at this from the standpoint of academics, you know, William Darity.
Oh, that much I knew, but I certainly see that. It's interesting to me because I think it's interesting that I originally wrote
Yes, but
away from it.
So when we look at this from the standpoint of academics, you know, William Darity, he has a great paper, 40 Acres and a Mule in the 21st century. You start to understand
if you were, first of all, we can't put a dollar, you know, when you're talking about lives of people. Same time, I read a book once that said something very interesting. It said,
that's hilarious. Son, they bought and sold us. We was on the stock market. Right. A price tag is on us. But you know what? You know why she said that? She got said $1 trillion investment. See, she just tried $1 billion, 100 billion. $1 trillion investment. And trillion, he's not talking about just 1 trillion. He's talking about multiple trillions. When he said that, she got sticker shock. See, she don't know that he's telling us it wasn't. She's basically by answering him after he says $1 trillion and answering him, replying to him by saying, well, you can't put a price on human beings, on human lives. She's basically telling him, what we did to y'all wasn't that bad. It wasn't worth that much. She's saying slavery wasn't that bad. Now, I want to see what Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell really made of. Because if they don't give her the type of answers that we're talking about right here, I'm gonna have to sideline them. I'm not gonna unsubscribe from their channel, but I can't trust them. Because if you and I are sitting here and neither one of us have graduated from high school, Yvette Carnell went to a big HBCU, and he's a lawyer, and he don't ask the question that you and I are asking, and we ain't never been to high school. I can't trust them. They're agents. I want to see him go in on her. She's telling him, she's sitting here in his face telling him that DOSs, what we did to DOSs, ain't even worth it. It wasn't worth trillions. We ain't do $1 trillion worth damage worth to y'all. If he don't come up to her with that, he's sitting here cooling. Is anybody else in the chat room with me on this? Y'all feel me on this? This white lady is sitting here saying it ain't worth $1 trillion. That's what she's saying. Now, maybe she was speaking out of her emotion. Maybe she was speaking out of fear, emotional fear of losing her white privilege. But if she was, she's going to have to say, you know what? Yeah, that was very disrespectful for me to say that it wasn't worth $1 trillion. Because that's really what she's saying. Do you agree?
I agree, but I think she's probably more of like speaking of in realistic and in political terms. That I mean,
you think she's looking at it what's politically feasible, right? Yes. But it's still an insult, son. Even if she's speaking out of political expediency and feasibility, it's very disrespectful to sit across the table from a slave and you sitting up on this high mountain of wealth and you said, well, what we did to y'all wasn't worth that much. You sitting on a mountain of gold that we built for you. That's very disrespectful, son.
And I understand that, but I think that the problem that people are going to have is that, people are looking at the end result and they're not really looking at the process. People want to, jump to these large numbers. And I personally don't feel like Black people are about to get no reparations. I feel like
I don't either. I don't either. And not only that, I don't even think they can pay us back.
Yeah, I mean,
they can't.
$1 trillion in debt.
In order for you to really pay a person back, there has to be a right spirit. It's not just it's not. No, I know, but you know me, I'm gonna go spiritual. I'm gonna go spiritual. I'm gonna go there. I can't help it. But in order for you to really receive reparations and real love from somebody, right. You're not going to factor that in, but I'm going to factor that in. That's a very, very important and contributing factor to being restored. The person that's restoring you got to have the right spirit. It's not just about a paycheck. Is anybody feeling me here? Hey, what's going on, Kev Mercer? What's going on, man? Long time no see. Shalom. Is y'all real quiet tonight? Maybe y'all busy eating dinner or something. I know y'all got other stuff going on in your life. But are y'all hearing me here? Is anybody with me on this thing? Because this lady here, she heard that $1 trillion, boy, and she panicked. Let's keep going.
Compromise. No, he said with vision, you must never compromise. With politics is the art of compromise. So I certainly, in any kind of a deal, there's negotiation. And I feel that my part, the part that I am seeking to play as a candidate and that I would seek to play as president, has to do with building the case and building the consensus that a wrong must be righted and that America will not move forward in the ways we would wish to move forward until we do this, not only in honor of our ancestors, but in service to our descendants. That is the part that I feel, that's my piece. And if I'm honored enough to be president, then we sit down. And I think clearly the issue is not only what should be done, but what can be done. And I also understand, I've heard people such as...
I want to tell you something. I don't like when our enemy starts the conversation with what can be done. I want to know what should be done. Because too often when your enemies is in their court and they're going to decide what should be done, it's basically what they want to do, not what you need done.
Well, these people have all the power. So the fact they're even having this conversation, you're not really, as a group, have no real
leverage.
And really, they can give you or not give you whatever they want to give you. And, there's nothing over their head from you, really, that can, like, no type of threat nothing that you really can do. So anything that they decide to do is going to be either in their best interest now or in the future at some point.
Okay. Well, let's look at it this way, son. Look at it this way. This just purely hypothetical. But if I had Warren Buffett and Bill Gates knock on our door right now, and one of them said, "What do you want me to do?" And one of them said, "I'm going to only do what I can do." Which one should I go with?
I'll ask the one who said, "What do you want me to do?"
Exactly.
And that option is on the table.
Now, I want to tell you who you think is the more righteous. The one who tell me what they want to do, or what I want them to do. Who you think is the most sincere out of the two? If Bill Gates and Warren Buffett knocked on the door, and one asked me, "I'm going to do what I can do," and the other one says, "You know what? There's been a great injustice done to you. What do you want me to do?" Who do you think is the most sincere out of the two?
I mean, I would say the person is asking you, but then just because you tell them, which that means they can do that thing.
Huh?
Just because you're telling them that, okay, and they ask you, and you tell them, that don't mean that that's whatever you're asking them can even be done.
But watch this, son. Let's say they can't do what I asked them to do. Let's say they can't. Let's say that person can't do what I asked them to do. But guess what they do try to do?
What?
They try to get that thing done some kind of way. You know what I'm going to be able, you know what I'm going to look at? You know what that's going to tell me about the intents of their heart and their character? That's going to tell me that they really for real, for real. Is anybody with me on here, on this thing? And let me say this too. Let me throw this in. Let's say, son, I go to one of these billionaires come to me and they say, and I tell them what I want. And then they say, "That's all you want?" Because you know how niggas go, a lot of our people are. They just gonna want some weave, some bundles, some edge gel, some chicken, and a Cadillac. Not some people. You know our people. We ain't used to nothing, so we've been at the bottom a long time. So black folks would turn to turn. You funny, Kev. some black folks just want some good weed. some 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 black folks just want some extra money on their EBT card. Some Negroes, they just want their bank draft, overdraft paid for. That's how short-sighted a lot of our people are. They have no thought about what we have been through as a people. Every concern that they have is immediate. And that's sad, y'all. And that's one of the things that I'm real fearful about our tangible people, our 2020 tangible group of people. They're not going to ask, they don't even know what they really want. They're not going to even ask for the right thing. They don't underbid what they've been, the experience that they've experienced. They're going to undervalue it.
Professor Darity, it was a conversation with him. I don't know if he was the one who said it. It might have been the other man on the phone, but I understand the point of Black leaders saying, well, but if it's too small an amount, then it could possibly do us more harm than good.
Yes.
I understand that, actually.
I think you're going to get one shot at this thing, and you can't be scared to actually make the claim for what it actually is. We ourselves, ADOS101.com, have a full agenda because it's not just money, it's a number of other type of programs, infrastructure, things of the sort. Before I get into the new Washington Post article that just came out today, Yvette, you want to add any questions to those?
Y'all notice this, y'all? Y'all notice she never answered the question? Y'all notice that she never answered his question? Y'all notice that? Are y'all with me in here? Y'all quiet? Y'all notice that she never answered the question? I know I did a lot of talking, but she never answered the question. I'm going to go back a little bit. I don't believe that she really gave a salient answer to the actual question.
It makes, William Darity, he has the great paper, 40 Acres and a Mule in the 21st Century. You start to understand that this is a multi-trillion-dollar investment.
It's if you were, first of all, we can't put a dollar, when you're talking about lives of people. But at the same time, I read a book once that said something very interesting. It said, with philosophy, you must never.
I got to look at their chat room and see if anybody else caught that. Dag, it ain't no chat on here. Let me look at the comment section then. Well, I'm gonna have to read these comments later on, but I wish there was a chat that was with this.
No, he said with vision, you must never compromise. With politics is the art of compromise. So I certainly am, in any kind of a deal, there's negotiation. And I feel that my part, the part that I am seeking to play as a candidate and that I would seek to play as president, has to do with building the case and building the consensus that.
Oh, Kev Mercer, the one drop rule is going to apply to everybody on earth. If they go with the one drop rule, that means everybody on earth is black. And not only that, Kev Mercer, if they're going to dole out any reparation, guess who's going to go to first? Our oppressors. It's going to go to the federal government. It's not going to come to us in the form of a check. It's going to go straight to the government. You know how much administrative costs that's going to rack up? See, I don't even trust this reparation stuff. Every nation will dig up a black, exactly. Everybody on earth is going to be black. If Israelites get reparation, everybody on earth is going to be an Israelite. Everybody and their mama is going to be an Israelite. So I already could see ahead what this is all about, y'all. Your enemies cannot be in charge of paying you back for nothing. They really can't. They can't. They've already proven they never can be trusted. Of course, the one drop. Everybody's going to have the one drop rule. Chinese going to be coming over here on planes talking about the first samurai was black. They're gonna reach way back.
A wrong must be righted, and that America will not move forward in the ways we would wish to move forward until we do this, not only in honor of our ancestors, but in service to our descendants. That is the part that I feel that's my piece. And if I am honored enough to be president, then we sit down. And I think clearly.
She not answering the question, y'all. She's filibustering here. And I'm going to tell you something. I don't like the fact that Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell, it's like Yvette Carnell is not even on the phone. They just letting her skate away. They just letting her skate away. She don't even answer the question. She's just skating off. See, this is not real journalism, y'all. If this is the new black media, we better watch out. If we're gonna have to depend on Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell and they're like the people of their ilk to speak up for us, there's a problem. And that's why I said earlier, we're gonna have to be our own new media. We can't be dependent on people that don't have our same worldview. We agree with them as long as we can agree with them. But when they start departing from us, we're going to have to break ranks with them.
The issue is not only what should be done, but what can be done. And I also understand, I've heard people such as Professor Darity, there was a conversation with him. I don't know if he was the one who said it. It might have been the other man on the phone. But I understand the point of Black leaders saying, well, but if it's too small an amount, then it could possibly do us more harm than good.
Yes.
I understand that, actually.
I think you're going to get one shot at this thing. And
yeah, she says she understands that, actually. But guess what? She doesn't specify how she understands it. See, I don't like that tricky talk. If you're going to tell me you're going to understand something, tell me how you understand it. Don't leave stuff up to the imagination.
You can't be scared to actually make the claim for what it actually is. We ourselves, ADOS101.com, have full agenda because it's not just money. It's a number of other type of programs, infrastructure, things of the sort. Before I get into the new Washington Post article that just came out today, Yvette, you want to add any questions to those 2 points?
Well, I have a question. And I actually, right after college, I read your first book, Return to Love. And one of the things that you kind of said is every step that you take is a step toward love or a step toward fear. So it's kind of interesting when you say that you kind of step away from that.
Yeah, in fear, exactly.
Yeah, and so the question that I have in terms of you're entering this realm of politics and there are structures, there are democratic structures, there are machine politics that you're entering into. And you mentioned like Abraham Lincoln, and I think, Martin Luther King Jr. would kind of be in this stead. And I'm wondering, in terms of how you position yourself, in terms of what your philosophy is, in terms of, the spiritual framework, in terms of the redress and that sort of thing, how do you navigate this sort of, where you're going to do advocacy, because Lincoln was assassinated, MLK was assassinated. Like, if you're going to do advocacy, that includes descendants of slaves, you're going to have people come at you in a very real world kind of way. And how do you maintain what you have as your value set in that world of politics?
Well, physical survival is no guarantee for anyone. It's no guarantee that you won't be killed in a car accident this afternoon. And I'm in a public career, and anybody who is a public orator or anybody who stands on stage and does anything understands that they're a clear shot for someone in the audience. That's just true no matter what you're doing. And at a certain point in life, you can't be guided by that. But I already have a career for 35 years where I say what I believe is the truth that needs to be said. Now, I believe, and I've mentioned this a lot recently,
I can't believe, y'all, that Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell is sitting up here and gonna let her off the hook about the original reparation question. See, that's the kind of stuff I look at. She never answered the question. She danced around it and tap shoed and soft-shoed around it, but she never answered the question. And these supposed to be two big ADOS people here, the originators of the ADOS movement, and they just let her skate off the hook. See, I don't like that. That's an integrity issue there with me. I ain't throwing them under the bus, but I'm disappointed because the stakes are high.
Every time I mention the topic of reparations for slavery, which is only one of the things that I talk about, but on that particular topic, I get applause every time I bring it up. I was in Exeter, New Hampshire the other day. New Hampshire is one of the whitest states in America. I get applause. Iowa, one of the whitest states in America. I get applause. Even when I'm talking to all white audiences in South Carolina, I get applause. This is how I feel. I feel the American people are good people. We don't have a political force field at this time which seeks to tap into the goodness of people. It seeks to tap into the selfishness of people, the entitlement of people, the self-centeredness of people. And of course, on the other side, we have a president who's harnessed the fear in people, some of the worst aspects of the American character for political purposes. We have done the right thing before.
Yeah, it might be the strongest. It might be the worst aspect of the American character that Trump is tapping into, but guess what? It's the strongest. It might be the worst, but guess what? It's one of the strongest characteristics of the American psyche. And that's why he feels so willing to tap into it. I don't want her talking denial to me. We know what America is about. So I don't want to hear all this, oh, you know, we're basically good people, and I don't want to hear that. You're talking about repaying reparations for a group of people that you enslaved for hundreds of years. So don't tell me about how good you are. I don't want to hear that, because that's incongruence to the conversation and to the character of the individuals that perpetrated this.
I mean, this country did ultimately support civil rights legislation. This country did support the women's suffrage movement.
Not really.
I don't think I don't think it's reasonable to just assume that if people were given the opportunity to do the right thing within a context of explanation, that's the thing. As I said before, I don't think the average person, and this is because, you know, 11 states in this country don't even require half a year of American history and civics. And even those that do, look at an American history book and you look at what's in there about the 100 years between the end of slavery and the civil rights legislation. I think the average American does not know the whole arc of our history. And not only do they not know the facts, and this is another thing that I'm seeking to do with my candidate.
Well, ignorance is no excuse, okay? Ignorance is no excuse for breaking the law, okay? That's what I have to say to that.
That I would hope to do as president. We need a much wider humanity, breadth of our humanity brought into our
Yeah, you know, all this little fluffy talk about humanity and all that, and you slaved us. I don't want to hear that now. I want to hear about humanity from my oppressor when you slaved me, and y'all haven't made any gesture to try to make it right. Not that you could make it right, but you haven't even made a gesture to make it right. You haven't repented. Nobody said they even sorry. So I don't want to hear all that. I don't want to hear all that about humanity now. Now that we're talking about reparations and payback, now you want to talk about humanity. I don't want to talk about that. It's out of order. You wasn't talking about that when y'all was whipping our backs, raping our women, feeding us to alligators, tearing our men apart, butt breaking. Y'all wasn't talking about humanity then. So I don't want to hear that. It's, you know, just lady, please.
Consideration of political subjects. I don't think, you know, we're a country which is young, and this a country which is optimistic, or certainly has been. And so we are not a country that has included in our political conversation sometimes the depth of human emotion that stems from a deep understanding of certain historical realities.
Blah, blah, blah. Lady, stop it. Please, please stop it, white lady. Come on. Nobody was doing all this little flowery talk when they was beating our back. We don't want to hear that now. That it's time for the big payback. Bars. Y'all listening to this lady? Y'all listening to this lady? This lady want to get all philosophical and moral with me and stuff. I don't want to hear none of that now.
And I don't think the average person is bad. I think the average American hasn't really sat and thought about what 2.5 centuries of slavery was.
See, and I guess I come to additional point to that, and thinking about things in terms of good and bad. I more so think of things in terms of the average person's self-interested. And when we look at this nation, you know, as I was sharing with you, there are more Black men incarcerated than pretty much all women on the planet. There's 4 billion women, about 700,000 are incarcerated. The large sum being in America, 200,000 of that 700,000 being American women. But just 20 million Black males produce 700,000 prisoners. And so I asked the question, if your life sits upon that today, does that say that you really, really don't too much care about race? And so now when I introduce reparations, you don't think about it in terms of good and bad. You just think about it in terms of, I need a job, and I need my kids to be fed.
The part of the brain that rationally analyzes an issue is not the same part of the brain that decides who to vote for. The part of the brain that rationally analyzes an issue is not necessarily the part of the brain that receives it on the level that we need it received. And that's what I meant by the actual bearing witness to the agony, which is not, you can say all the facts that you want, and I remind you that's not working. But when someone opens up, which is not an easy thing to do if you're not used to it, to the emotional and human.
You know what? They need to really put the heat on this lady. She's doing way too much talking. They letting her run loose in this interview way too much. And Antonio Moore don't normally do that for nobody. But it's a white lady on here, and he letting her just run wild. He not really asking the hard questions like he know how to do. And I'm kind of disappointed at him, to be quite frank.
Your human reality. 2.5 centuries of slavery, followed by, and this is where, and I'm telling you, this is my experience talking to white audiences. So many white audiences, when I talk about the Black Code laws, when I talk about the 100 years, when I talk about the 40 acres and a mule, when I talk about the Ku Klux Klan, when I talk about the lynchings, when I talk about then what happened full-on white supremacy and segregation at night by 1900, when I talk about the fact that it took 100 years before this was fundamentally addressed, that was another phase of violence.
Right.
I people look at me, you know, like no one had sort of presented it for them in the way they might have. I remember when the movie Schindler's List came out, I didn't really want to see it because I knew it was going to be difficult. But I also...
Just because you don't want to look racist doesn't mean you aren't a racist. Thank you. Thank you, Kev Mercer. Because that's an okie doke that a lot of Black people fall for. When white people don't want to look racist, they think that means they not racist. They the worst ones. That's a good point.
I knew that I had to, that it was morally incorrect of me to look away. And I think that in America, we've developed this society where you just throw this cheap yellow happy face, happy, let's all be happy. Well, some things are actually not very happy.
So let me ask you just straight. If white America understands reparations as a restructuring, and when I say a restructuring, I'm not even thinking in terms of money, meaning you can't be white anymore. We gotta just all be people. Do you think white America is ready to accept that?
White America is not a monolith. No, white America is not a monolith. Neither is Black America, for that matter. But I don't think, I think we need to move.
I don't like the question he asked. I don't like the question he just asked that lady. That we can just be people. I don't like the question.
Well, some things are actually not very happy.
So let me ask you just straight. If white America understands reparations as a restructuring, and when I say a restructuring, I'm not even thinking in terms of money, meaning you can't be white anymore. We gotta just all be people. Do you think white America is ready to accept it?
I'm not for this intersectionality stuff. I'm not into this intersectionality stuff. I'm an Israelite, a melanated Israelite. That's what I am, okay? I don't want to just be people. That's too generic. I want to be an Israelite. That's what I am. That's what I'm going to be. I don't want to get rid of that and just meld together with all kind of people and just be one melting pot. And I don't like Black people talking the way that he's talking right now.
White America is not a monolith. No, white America is not a monolith. Neither is Black America, for that matter. But I don't think, I think we need to move beyond the concept of traditional strategizing into the awareness that there is a quantum field of infinite possibility that arises out of love. So the majority didn't wake up one day and say, let's free the slaves. And the majority didn't wake up one day and say, let's give women the right to vote. And the majority didn't wake up one day and say, let's dismantle segregation. Those who believed in it strongly and whose hearts were ablaze with what those things represented in terms of doing the right thing stood deeply on what they believed. And that conviction became a force multiplier. This whole idea of how you're going to navigate and who you're going to convince, my career so far.
See the picture that they flashed up there when he asked that question. This is the picture that they flashed up there. I'm not into this kind of stuff right here. I don't want intersectionality, gays, because see, when Antonio Moore talks about let's just be people, he's talking about let's be just gay, let's be homosexuals, let's be LBGQ, let's be Caucasian, German, French, and let's just be people. And so they flashed this picture. No, I'm not interested in that at all. I'm interested in being with my people. And they only got, and watch this. In this picture here, it's really interesting. The only one that's noticeably of color is the guy in the middle. And there might be a little mixed breed, a couple of mixed breeds on here. So this is an example of what Antonio Moore is looking for. I'm not interested in that at all.
Well, for me, simply saying, what would love do? And I've seen in my life, and I've seen what has happened in so many people's lives around me, that when you ask what would love do, that means you have to recognize when there is a debt to be paid, when there is a defect of character.
Let me tell you this, y'all. The hell with love got to do with it? You know, what do love got to do with it? Love didn't have nothing to do with y'all beating our backs for free and making us work for free. So I don't want to start talking about love right now. No. Let's talk business, okay? If we're gonna talk anything, let's talk business. I don't want to get we're not gonna get emotional about this. Not especially with an enemy. No.
Now, I think that when you lay out the story in a certain way, it is my experience with white audiences that when you lay out the story in a certain way, people go, yeah, that makes sense. I'm not lying to you when I tell you I get applause every time.
Yvette, anything you want to add to that?
Well, one of the things in terms of, I mean, if we provide the context, we're talking about Trump's America, right? In the sense of, we saw the people in Charlottesville, we've seen like this uptick in racism and racist rhetoric and things that we didn't really anticipate seeing in 2019. So I definitely understand what you're saying in terms of, you know, what would love do. But in the political arena, and I understand your idea not to like navigate that in a traditional political style. But what I would say is, don't you have to ask yourself, like, what do you do in the face of that kind of hatred that wants to kind of skip by and skip past the suffering of descendants of slaves? Doesn't that have to be a meeting of the sort of a meeting of the minds in a sense, in terms of like, you know, the Bible says, I'm in this world, but I'm not of it. You got to be in it too, right?
Well, I feel I'm very in it, and running for president is very in it. You know, those men walking, and some women on the streets of Charlottesville, they were saying, Jews shall not replace us. These were Nazis. They were after the Jews. So it was not just racist, it was also severely anti-Semitic. Jews shall not replace us. Jews shall not replace us. So I'm very aware. I'm very aware as a Jew. And I'm very aware that this is not a small danger. And I'm very aware that steps must be taken. But that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So when I say that's why I'm doing.
Okay, so this lady is Jewish. So she just admitted that she's a Jew. That's interesting. Very, 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 very interesting.
What I'm doing, I believe we need to harness love for political purposes. I'm not just having a philosophical conversation, remember, I'm running for president. And for that very reason, Trump has harnessed fear for political purposes. We must harness love for political purposes. Nazis and racists and anti-Semites and homophobes and Islamophobes, they're like an opportunistic infection. The problem.
No, notice she left out black people. She mentioned every group but black people. Let me play it again.
Reason. Trump has harnessed fear for political purposes. We must harness love for political purposes. Nazis and racists and anti-Semites and homophobes and Islamophobes, they're like an opportunistic infection.
Okay, so she did say racist, so that would cover us.
The problem is that we have a weakened immune system. I saw online the other day, yesterday or something, that Louis Pasteur, the great scientist, on his deathbed said, I was wrong. It's not the germ, it's the terrain. So that's exactly what I'm talking about here. We need to have such an uprising of our moral conviction, without which no amount of political strategizing, without which no amount of political, the normal, what we think of, is going to be strong enough. You can't defeat those kinds of dog whistles. You have to drown them out with angel voices. And angel voices emanate not from people who are just angry or having an intellectual or economic conversation. Angel voices means the power, not only of our voices, but of our spirits, when we're coming from a place of love.
So let me ask you this too.
Let me tell you something, y'all. When somebody get this, when they start talking this heavenly and stuff and religious, I get a little nervous because it's like they trying to change the narrative and trying to make you forget about what you're talking about by doing all this flowery spiritual talk, mumbo jumbo stuff. She talking about angels and, huh? What are you talking about? We're talking about doing business and you start talking about angels. You know, a lot of people take advantage of us because we are a spiritual people. And they start doing all this flowery razzle dazzle talk. You know, I don't want to hear that when I'm talking about business. Now they want to talk about Jesus, you know. You talking about getting paid back, and now they want to talk about God, Jesus, and Nephilims and all kinds of stuff. Giants. You know, I don't want to talk about that. What are you talking about? Let's just accept wickedness. Just because, right. Hey, what's going on? Native creation, shalom.
We live in a time where wealth has calcified to the point of something we haven't seen since the Depression. You know, top 0.1% has the same amount of wealth as the bottom 90. We haven't seen that since the Depression. What I come to you with then is, can angel voices be enough in an America where white America is Ubering as well, Uber driving, where white America...
Oh, good. Antonio getting fired up. Good, Antonio. He said, is angel voices enough? Thank you. Finally. He finally going in some kind of way. Thank you, brother. Please. Don't get intimidated just because it's a white woman. I ain't saying you act like this with any other guest.
Like they don't have enough as well, and they're underwater in their homes. Do people need to be comfortable to actually hear these voices?
This is why this is such an urgent moment. That's why.
America, where white America is Ubering as well, Uber driving, where white America feels like they don't have enough as well, and they're underwater in their homes.
Our spirits, when we're coming from a place of love.
So let me ask you this too, Ben. We live in a time where wealth has calcified to the point of something we haven't seen since the Depression. You know, top 0.1% has the same amount of wealth as the bottom 90. We haven't seen that since the Depression. What I come to you with then is, can angel voices be enough in an America where white America is Ubering as well, Uber driving, where white America feels like they don't have enough as well, and they're underwater in their homes? Do people need to be comfortable to actually hear these voices?
Thank you.
This is why this is such an urgent moment. That's why. Because large groups of desperate people are a security risk. Desperate people do desperate things. Desperate people are more vulnerable to ideological capture by genuinely psychotic forces. I don't think Trump would be president had there not been so many millions of chronically, economically desperate people. What we have on our hands now is a situation, I mean, even since he's been president, the 2017 tax bill, where $2 trillion, that 83 cents of every dollar goes to the top, plus you have this extraordinary wave of automation that's going to come at us like a tsunami of job destruction over the next 15 years. This is why I'm doing this. We need a miracle. We need something that comes from a quantum field of endless possibility, and which we know does occur every time in history. It has been proven.
Let me tell you something. The way that this lady is talking, she's talking too ethereal for me. You know, it's too much speculation in this. It's too much for speculation for this. You know, she's talking about we need miracles. You know, it wasn't no miracle how y'all made us work for free. Y'all told us to get out there or you gonna kill us. So I don't want to hear all this talk about miracles. Now it's time for y'all to pay back. I don't want to hear that. We're gonna need a miracle. When it comes to white people doing something, now everybody needs a miracle now. But when they had us working out in the fields, ripping us apart, whipping our backs, raping our women, nobody said that we needed a miracle. But they need a miracle now. It's time to pay back. Weren't they desperate back in those slave days, killing? Hello. Amen, native creation. Amen. You know, we can't let this white woman just come in our neighborhood and work white magic on us by talking about angel voices and miracles and all this garbage. See, I know a lot of a lot of our people get mesmerized when they hear white people, especially white women talking. This lady talking kind of a little crazy to me.
Promulgated. That's what Martin Luther King brought forth. That's what Gandhi brought forth. Traditional, that's kind of my point. You're actually proving my point. What we're working with now is not strong enough. Traditional politics is not strong enough to override such a nefarious force as is working against our democracy right now.
So look,
let me tell you something. Now that she's talking about reparations and stuff, now she's saying that traditional politics is not enough to help us. Well, why was it enough to help y'all? Traditional politics was enough to help y'all, but now it's not good enough to help us. Now that reparations is in the question, in the mix. See, I'm not feeling this. Yeah, they were the psychotic ones.
It's actually interesting because this leads me right into the Washington Post article that came out today.
Wait, what you're talking about the Washington Post today? You mean the thing?
The one that talked about reparations, and no Democratic candidate really has a plan.
Oh.
Everybody's agreed to reparations. You know, Kamala Harris on the Breakfast Club was loosely asked about reparations.
But you know what's going on.
What's going on?
Well, what's going on is that we brought it up. Yes. And so that's causing problems for her.
Yes.
And for Elizabeth. And so that's how the status quo does. The status quo protects itself by co-opting disruptive language. So now your traditional candidates will say things like a path that leads.
Now listen to this. This lady saying that the other candidates are co-opting disruptive language. That looked like exactly what she's doing. Now, I will give her credit. She did write about reparations in 1997. I'll give her that. But being a presidential candidate and talking about representation is a whole nother color of horse, especially when you put a dollar figure on it like $100 billion, which is nothing. So she's talking about they're co-opting disruptive language. It looked like that's what she's doing.
Reparations or race-conscious policies. It's always a path that leads to universal health care or a path that leads to reparations. Is the status quo saying what it thinks it needs to say in order to get away with not doing it?
I have to agree with that part because when I look at what Kamala Harris talks about, the LIFT program, I don't understand how that fixes the dire state of Black families across this country.
Come on. Antonio Moore, don't start throwing her softballs by start talking about Kamala Harris and other presidential candidates. Keep the spotlight on her, brother. Keep the fire on her. Now y'all gonna gang up on Kamala Harrison. Kamala Harrison is an idiot. Let's keep the spotlight, the heat on this white lady that's right in front of you. I don't want to start talking about no Kamala Harrison or Cory Booker.
And then in addition, I don't understand how someone who actually instituted a truancy problem that put people in basically in prison for poverty and not sending their kids to school institutes that as well.
And you should also ask about why the one person running for president who has talked about this as a specific plan is left out of such articles and shut out of the mainstream press.
We're talking about you, right?
I sure am.
Do you feel shut out from the mainstream press?
I think it's very obvious that when you have even a topic such as you just mentioned, and I'm the one candidate who's actually brought forth a plan that instead of actually talking about me.
I'm going to actually go to her website and read her plan on reparations. I'm going to actually go to her website and read her plan. Marianne Williamson. I want to read her plan on her website, because she's saying she's been shut out because of that. I'm going to read it.
Anything other than describing me as long shot, which of course then makes you a long shot, or minimizing what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, it's obvious, and I don't want to come across like whiny or for me, but this is much bigger than just about me. It's how the status quo protects itself.
Yvette, anything you want to add to that?
No, I do. I agree with her there. I think this is how the status quo protects itself. And
I think they should be asking her way harder questions, because when you see them on their regular podcast, they really be going in. Now they got this white lady sitting in front of her, and it's like they letting her off the hook. They throwing softballs at her. Now he did go in a little bit. Antonio did go in a little bit, but it's tame. It really is. The only angel voices she knows of are the fallen ones. She act like she's so concerned for what? And more importantly, what does she and her people need saving from? Hello. Thank you. Thank you, Native Creations.
And I think because of that, what you're looking at is something that's going to require, a lot of work in terms of something that she said before, because there's something that Ms. Williamson said before that I haven't heard from a lot of people, right? You hear a lot. We've heard Elizabeth Warren talk about, she came out talking about red money. Now you have Kamala Harris talking about loosely, like you said, reparations. And one of the things that really struck me in a different interview that I would like to hear you talk more about is you talk about, like, these are not just people. What happens in terms of Black American ADOS people is we are victimized by systems and how to change those systems. And I would like to hear you speak more specifically about those systems. And like, if you were elected president, what steps would you, initially, I'm not talking about, the most intricate of specifics, take to kind of change those systems?
Well, those systems of economic injustice, of course, do not just apply to Black people. It applies to white people very much as well. And we know that there are.
Yeah, lady, just stop, okay? We don't want to hear how it applies to other people. We want to hear how it applies to the people that's at the bottom, the people who are receiving the brunt and the largest of the punishments. We don't want to talk about white people. We don't want to talk about Mexicans. We want to talk about our people. Every time we start bringing something up about us, they start bringing up something about somebody else. What the hell is this? Every time we start talking about something that hurts us, well, it's not just you, it's white people too. Huh? Are you crazy? It's white people running the system. So if white people are being punished by their own system, that's their damn fault.
Very specific policies that have been put in place and other policies that have been repealed over the last 40 years, particularly, that amounted to this systematic removal of massive amounts of wealth from the public treasury into the hand.
Haven't heard from a lot of people, right? You hear a lot. We've heard Elizabeth Warren talk about, she came out talking about red money. Now you have Kamala Harris talking about loosely, like you said, reparations. And one of the things that really struck me in a different interview that I would like to hear you talk more about is you talk about, like, these are not just people. What happens in terms of Black American ADOS people is we are victimized by systems and how to change those systems. And I would like to hear you speak more specifically about those systems. And like, if you were elected president, what steps would you, initially, I'm not talking about, the most intricate of specifics, take to kind of change those systems?
Well, those systems of economic injustice, of course, do not just apply to Black people. It applies to white people very much as well.
You hear this lady? You hear this lady? It don't just apply to Black people. It applies to white people as well. We know it applies to white people, but the people that receive the brunt of it is us. I hate when people do that.
And we know that there are very specific policies that have been put in place and other policies that have been repealed over the last 40 years, particularly, that amounted to this systematic removal of massive amounts of wealth from the public treasury into the hands of a very, very few people. This has to do with subsidies. It has to do with tax
native
cuts.
creation.
It has to do with a repeal of Glass-Steagall. It has to do with failing to prosecute antitrust
Citizens United.
Pardon?
Citizens United.
Citizens United, definitely. And that's what I mean when I talk about these systems that need to be addressed and fundamentally challenged. By the way, when you talked a few minutes ago about the fact that this is the largest wealth inequality since 1929, not every rich person is greedy and not every poor person is noble and pure. And I do think there are a lot of very, very wealthy people in America who are deeply aware.
Just stop, lady.
Path we're on.
Please. Hey, y'all. We don't want to hear in the richest country in the world, and the reason why it got that way is because they had slaves. We don't want to hear that in the richest country in the world, everybody that's rich is not slaved by one of our oppressors. We don't want to hear that talk, y'all. Is anybody listening? Now she gonna tell us that every rich person ain't greedy. In America, it don't even matter. Show me the rich person that's making overtures to pay back descendants of slaves, descendants of oppressed people, money. Show me that rich person and then tell me they're not greedy. You got all these rich people in the United States that are Caucasian, and they're not making any overtures to make amends for what their ancestors have done. They living high on the hog. They're not thinking about us. You hear what I'm saying? She gonna tell us not every rich person is greedy. Well, show me the rich person that's coming to the ghetto to help us improve our situation. Show me that rich person. Well, if you can't show me that rich person, every white person that's rich is greedy. So don't tell me that. Y'all done got y'all comeuppance off our slavery, and then you're gonna tell us every rich person is not greedy. Lady, you better go sit down.
Capitalism at this point will create its own repudiation if it does not move back into some kind of ethical center. Now, even if it did that, though, we have the issue of the economic disparity having to do with Black America. And to me, what impacts me, the part that is essential as a white American, and that I feel audiences really hear, has to do with the historical narrative. The fact that the 40 acres and a mule was promised, what that would have meant to a family of four, that a population which certainly had skill sets because they had been slaves, they had been forced laborers, what it would have meant to have 40 acres and a mule, how that would have allowed for integration economically, what the code laws did, Black code law.
Lady, we're not interested in integration. We're not interested in integration right now, lady. Now, I know some of our coon people and our hashtag 2020 people, yeah, they're interested in that. But I'm not, as an Israelite, I'm not interested in integration at all. You keep your integration.
How it ensured a subpar opportunity socially, politically, and economically. So then when I walk that through with people, and then people understand, well, what did the Civil Rights Act do? And what did the Voting Rights Act do? And understand that the dismantling of many of the external aspects of segregation was achieved with the Civil Rights Act, and that with the Voting Rights Act, which, however, we have started chipping away at, which is why you have all these voter suppression efforts, and successful ones, by the way. But in 1965, the Voting Rights Act would then assure freedom at the polls. However, and I think this would have been different had King lived, and I think it would have been different had Nixon not won the election. But we just never, I don't want to minimize the struggles or the sacrifices or the successes of your ancestors or mine, but we have to see, what did they do? Because they did a lot, but what was left?
The only successes that your ancestors had was enslaving us. That was the prime success that your ancestors had. Enslaving and disenfranchising us. So don't try to make it seem like, well, your ancestors had success and ours had success, but without describing what type of successes they had. The successes we had was working for y'all for free.
Done. And that was the major economic piece, which they simply hadn't gotten to. And which then, with benign neglect, which was promulgated by Nixon, it's simply something that was never done. And the gap.
You hear the way this lady talking. She's saying it's just simply something that was never done. As if these people were just good people. It's just simply something that was never done. You hear this lady? This is crazy.
Has remained and grown.
Let's make sure that we understand slavery as an institution. We all going back to what you said.
Yeah, thank you, Antonio Moore. What was slavery as an institution? Because it sounded like she trying to dial up what slavery was. She trying to sugarcoat what slavery is. So yeah, I want to hear Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell go into the guts of what slavery really was, because this lady trying to make it seem like it was a picnic in the park somewhere. And the votes go to an electoral college and they just decide what votes they want to count and which ones they don't. Furthermore, all the political legislators, governors, presidents are handpicked. Before anyone votes, the president inauguration is an actual Roman ritual that pays homage to a certain somebody. It has nothing to do with the government. Exactly. But let's hear Antonio Moore break down what slavery was all about, because this lady trying to put a Pollyanna spin on what slavery was. She really talking greasy about slavery, like it was just like we were indentured slaves or something, indentured servants. You know, I don't like the way she talks about slavery either.
Got undertold the story. We didn't get told the story correctly. You know, slavery wasn't a Southern institution; it was an American institution. All of the banks that owned the notes on those big plantations, they were in the North. All the clothes were made in the North. All the clothes were made in the North. All of the cotton was transshipped from the North to England. I think that one of the lies that we tell ourselves is that it was a purely a Southern institution when it was the undergirding of the nation. Now, I continue by saying one of the next things that we don't deal with is the transition of Blackness. Here on this show, we move from a system where Black bodies hold basically the keynotes to American wealth to a system in redlining where Black bodies are a contagion to wealth itself. So when Blacks and are autonomous, they basically destroy wealth. But when Blacks are owned by white people, they are the most expensive thing you can possibly own. By that, I mean a slave, when they had 3 years of field training, is worth more than a house, one slave. And I put this on by saying, we built this nation in a way where, as Darity shows, 40 acres he shows us in the paper, 40 acres in a mule in the 21st century. It literally communicates out to about $400,000 a recipient if you do the math. That's his account. Yeah. But the interesting part is we forget the mule, and I think
something that was never done.
Hey y'all, it looked like Antonio Moore is beginning to get his stride, because Yvette Carnell is real quiet. It's like she's not even on the phone. So I got to play this over because he said some good stuff here.
And grown.
Let's make sure that we understand slavery. We also, what you said, got undertold the story. We didn't get told the story correctly. institution. It was an American institution. All of the banks, the notes on those big plantations, they were in the North. All the clothes were made in the North. All the clothes were made in the North. All of the cotton was transshipped from the North to England. The lies that we tell ourselves is that it's purely a Southern institution, girding of the nation. Now, I continue by saying one of the next things we don't deal with is the transition of Blackness. And on this show, system where Black bodies hold basically the key to American wealth, lining where Black bodies are a contagion to wealth itself. So when Blacks own themselves and are autonomous, they basically destroy wealth. Blacks are owned.
In other words, Blacks are not worth anything when they own themselves. But when white people own us, we're the most valuable thing in the country. That's powerful. Powerful.
White people are the most expensive thing you possibly own. By that I mean a slave, when they had 3 years of field training, was worth more than a house. One slave. And I continue this on by saying we built this nation in a way where, as Darity shows,
that's a very, very powerful and poignant point that he's making. Very. A field slave, after he was trained for 3 years, was worth more than a house. One slave, y'all. We worth let's just say it this. How much is an African American, an Israelite worth with a college degree? We're not even as worth as we were when we were slaves with a degree now in 2019. Hello. Hey, Pamela Lumpkin, what's going on? Shalom. So this boy, he's getting his space because he letting her talk too much. More interactive. I'm going to rewind it again since Pam just showed up. I like this information he gives here.
Something that was never done, and the gap has remained and grown.
In slavery, all going back to what you said, undertold the story. He told the story correct. It wasn't a Southern institution. All of the banks that own the notes on those big plantations, they were in the North. All the clothes were made in the North. All of the cotton was transshipped from the North to England. I think that one of the lies that we tell ourselves is that it was purely a Southern institution, when it was the undergirding of the nation, by saying one of the next things that we don't deal with is the transition of Blackness. And we've talked about this on the show. We move from a system where Black bodies hold the keynotes to American wealth to a system in redlining where Black bodies are a contagion to wealth itself. So when Blacks own themselves and are autonomous, they basically destroy wealth.
Exactly.
But when Blacks are owned by white people, they are the most expensive thing.
Exactly.
By that age, when they had 3 years of field training, was worth more than a house. One slave.
Hey, y'all, a slave during slavery, slavery, after he had received just 3 years of field training, was worth more than a house a white person lived in, not no little shack. A slave was worth more than a house that Massa lived in. Now, let me ask you this. When a person graduates from law school today, are they worth more than $1 million home? Huh? Worth more than $100,000 home? No, they're not. And I'm going to tell you First of all, they're in debt if they just graduate or medical school. You ain't worth nothing. You're in the negative numbers. You're in the red when you graduate from college. How is it that an illiterate slave was worth more than a house that man lived in after only 3 years of field training? But the descendant of a slave today can't even go to law school and be worth $100,000 after graduating guade cum laude. Huh? He gonna be in debt. You gonna tell me something ain't wrong? An illiterate slave got more value than a person that graduate from school today? Wow. And can't even afford to live in an apartment. I'm just saying, y'all. There's some good information he's giving.
I continue this on by saying we built this nation. He shows 40 acres and he shows us in the paper 40 acres and a mule in the 21st century. It literally could it communicates out to about $400,000 a recipient if you do the math. That's his account.
Yeah.
But the interesting part is we forget the mule. And I think the mule was really important in message, because one of the ways you tricked and cheated Black people was by overcharging them for the tool to actually be American. Today in schooling and education, and we see Black students unable to pay student debt.
Exactly.
That they went out and got these educations.
That's what I just got through saying. How is it that you graduate from med school today with the highest honors, but you in debt? See?
They can't plug it anywhere. So I ask you also, what are your thoughts about HBCUs, and do you have any specific?
What is HBCU?
Historically Black colleges.
Well, I would ask you for the most informed information on that. That's a good thing, isn't it? Am I wrong? I would ask you, is that a good thing? Isn't it a good thing?
Yeah, it's a good thing to ask me, but at the same
time, aren't historically Black colleges? I mean, I would assume that when they were set up, maybe they were not with the best of intention, because they might have come from a consciousness of segregation at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But isn't it? I mean, I think that there are Jewish universities, and so why shouldn't there be Black universities, women's universities, if that's what people choose?
Yeah,
what am I missing?
But at the same time, I'm saying, Yvette, you want to speak to endowment amounts and what HBCUs are going through?
Well, one of the things that we face is Antonio and I always talk about the cost of slavery, and the cost of slavery is kind of still available, just like the cost of slavery. The fruit of that is so much in white life and white privilege. The cost is buried here. So what you see in terms of endowments of historically Black colleges that produce more Black doctors, that produce more Black teachers, much more than regular universities. What you see is that they don't have endowments. So we just saw Bennett College. They still didn't get their accreditation. They raised $5 million in a short period of time because they needed to, and they still didn't get accreditation. And so that poverty that has been left in the system because of slavery has meant that our HBCUs are underfunded and in danger of closing. And so one of the things that Antonio and I have put in terms of our agenda is federal money. The Howard University now gets money from the federal government, federal charter, federal money to show up HBCUs, because we don't get the money that was given to Johns Hopkins by what's the guy?
Private donors. Private donors.
But the former mayor of New York, right? We don't get those kind of billion-dollar, multi-million-dollar donations, because we are not a multi-million-dollar group. So I think what Antonio was going to is how do you shore up those groups, shore up those schools, and in general, what we, in terms of what kind of endowments that we need to have going forward and paying for that, and how do you do that?
Yeah. Have you thought about that?
Well, I do know this. I do know that in different cultural groups, there are the habits versus some that do not so much have the habits, whereby people who have made it into a better condition do not forget those who have not yet made it. That's one of the reasons why I feel people like Colin Kaepernick are very touching. These men who are have made it as very successful athletes, but refuse to simply look away from the people who have not been as fortunate or as talented as they, and make a statement. But I also think that is true, should be true, and I hope is true financially. You have a lot of Black wealth in this country. You have Black billionaires. And so I hope that there is also the cultural habit among Black wealth of supporting these colleges. You would know much more than I, but whether or not there is. But I do know there's a lot of Black wealth in America.
Yeah, and that's the pushback is that's the I think there's a certain presumption of an existence of a Black wealth class that really doesn't exist. I just did the data with Matt Brunig. There's less than 300,000 Black families that break $1 million, and they're largely at $1 and $1.2 million. I did an interview with one of the Black billionaires, Byron Allen, and literally what he states is that, you know, we have Black billionaires, but then we got real white billionaires. When I say a billionaire, I'm talking about a family that's worth $3 billion hard, $1 billion liquid. We have people like Oprah who have their money tied in certain things, but then you don't know if they really have liquid money that they can give to an institution. And I say all that to say we see that with our HBCUs. Literally, you had been in college unable to find a person that could just bless them with money versus Simmons College, the last HBCU, a single white man, not a billionaire, a single white man was able to give $4 million. I think that one of the problems of Black celebrity, Black entertainment, is it's created a false narrative that we have a wealth class of Black people that don't exist by the data. And I think that what it's done as a result is it's created also a belief in white America that Black people are choosing not to actually activate that money.
Well, I'm not going there, and nor do I think it's only the job of Black wealth to address the issue that you're talking about. I think that's America's job. And I would dispute the idea that there are Black billionaires because I've met a few.
No, I'm not saying
that they can't make their cash liquid. Come on.
No. I'm saying that there's only, to get in the top 5% of Black families, you only need 350 hard. I think one of the great failures of America is that it hasn't really told, you talked about history, it hasn't told the reality of the present. It hasn't told white America, you have almost all the wealth. And when I say that, I mean, when you look at it as a pie, white America has 90% of America's household wealth. Black America has 2.6. Now, I'm not saying that 2.6 it can't be used in some kind of way to undergird government, to play at the top level of what government needs to do to support institutions. But what I'm saying is that I think that we treat it as though Black America has the true 13% of the wealth to represent their population when they don't. So like fundamentally, these institutions from the Black church to the Black school to the Black family, they need government in a wholly different way.
Well, that's why, I mean, obviously, that's why we're here talking about reparations. I mean, obviously, I agree with that.
Yeah. Would you add anything, Yvette?
No, I think we need to be very careful when we discuss Black. People, when we discuss Oprah, that's not the same thing as like there are other quote unquote Black billionaires in Nigeria who are oil barons who don't have a history of slavery. And I think we just have to be very careful not to group these Black people together because we all have different heritages and different lineages. And just be very careful about like the Black billionaires that you meet. Part of the reason that's skewed is because sometimes they're not here. They don't have this kind of cost baked into their background, but they still have the same type of physical presentation, and we tend to just group them all together, but it's not American descendants of slaves or descendants of chattel slavery in this country.
And that leads me right into like this third question. I thank you so much for coming on today on such short notice. I know you have a speaking engagement this afternoon. I don't know if you're familiar with ADOS. It's been a big discussion. We've been pushing candidates to deal with lineage over color, and it's caused this whole question around Blackness when we're not talking about whether somebody is globally like Black in terms of that concept. We're talking about, are you an American descendant of slavery? And if you don't have that discussion, I don't believe you can get to reparations. Because if it happened now, reparations will be given to any Black person. It would be given to any Nigerian, any Caribbean. It wouldn't even be disseminated correctly. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with you.
Okay,
Yeah, America doesn't owe. Yeah, I understand. I understand who America owes to versus who America does not owe to.
Yeah, and so we see that both with the transition from a Barack Obama to a Kamala Harris. Barack Obama being half Kenyan, half white, and then labeled as the first African American president, which I believe he's the first Black president, but he's not the first African American president. African American as a term is really something that has a significant flaw. It's a continent and a country. Africa's not a country, it's a continent with 54 very diverse countries. And so like what you get is this dynamic of a term that was created for the progeny of American slavery, used to normalize people that aren't African American. They know they're not African American at home. They're Kenyan American or Jamaican American or Nigerian American, or for that matter, they're just Nigerian. And you have Kamala on the other side, who now is basically a Brahmin Indian on one side, which is the most elite Indian, and on the other side, she is Jamaican. And it's, you know, Jamaica also has non-Black Jamaicans, but she's Jamaican. She does not descend from American slavery. And I guess I'm just asking if you're familiar with us, and also did you get a chance to see our Black agenda? Because it kind of lays out a definite specificity around everything from infrastructure to schooling to healthcare to even reparations, just the beginning of a discussion.
I am familiar with the term. I'm familiar with the material that you sent me. And the conversation that I am most interested about as a candidate and would be as president is how to then operationalize all this. And when it comes to certain issues of housing and certain other systemic issues of obviously racist prejudice, the question becomes how much of that actually fundamentally repairs the basic error. Because, and I was mentioning to you before about how a former pope used the expression purification of memory, that with a prayer, until you have made a full-on apology and a full-on atonement, then you remain unconscious of ways that you continue to perpetrate the problem. So the reason I find reparations a particularly important piece of all this is because it acknowledges that a wrong was done. If we only talk about disparity in housing or disparity in education or disparity in whatever, then it could be argued that all we are doing is addressing the gap. The reason I think reparations has moral and psychological significance is because it is inherently an acknowledgement of a debt to be paid. It is inherently an acknowledgement of a wrong that was done and a wrong that must be made right. Now, I understand that then gets complicated. I totally understand that if you and I were sitting down at the table and saying, okay, how are we going to do this? I totally understand that you might say to me, well, we got to be careful here, because then if you don't have enough for reparations, and then we have a bunch of white people saying, we gave you enough, we gave you reparations. I understand that it gets complicated, but I have felt for myself as a candidate, and even way before I was a candidate, when I was talking about reparations 30 years ago in my book, Healing the Soul of America, that there is something, just as the Germans paid reparations to the Jews, $89 billion since World War II. And I know that has been a large part of the emotional and psychological reconciliation, not just economic reconciliation, between Germany and the Jews of Germany and the rest of Europe. And when I read about how Ronald Reagan in 1988 signed the American Civil Liberties Act, which gave to surviving prisoners, the prisoners who had been interned in the Japanese internment camps, and we gave them reparations, it has always felt to me, why haven't we given reparations? Now, I understand it's a multidimensional problem. I understand even on those economic issues, it gets kind of gnarly. Well, if you do this and you're not going to do that, etc. However, on a moral level, which is where this country most needs healing, if we don't have this moral and spiritual awakening, then nothing we do on the outside is going to be enough. And that's why the subject of reparations, even to put it on the table, to make the case for the moral need for America to do this, is what will release, I believe, great healing potential for our children, your children and mine.
But is your view on reparations more about the healing of the nation or repairing Black people, or is that the same for you?
To me, it's funny. White America needs as much as Black people need it. on an economic level, I understand Black people need it, but on a spiritual level, white people need it too. This is a place where we are, where we have a national character.
I don't like this stuff. I don't like when every time it's time for us to get healed, then people start saying, well, white people need this as much as Black people. I don't want to hear that from my enemies. It's all right for us to say that, but it's not all right for my enemies to say this before they even done anything, before they even made any overtures or gestures to help us. I don't want to hear them talking about that. It's too premature. It's too premature for them to talk about we need it as much as y'all need it. Did she just say white people need it? Yes, she did. Can you believe it? What's going on? Durblin, how you doing? Shalom. Can you believe that this white woman said that? What? See, you can't take these devils seriously. This lady gonna say that white people need to be healed just as much as Black people. I don't like all that mumbo jumbo little kumbaya talk. I don't like hearing that from my enemies. It's all right for me to say it, but it's not all right for you to say it when you got a gun in my back. And then you turn around, you got a gun in my back, and you're gonna say, I need healing as much as you. And I don't even have a gun. I don't want to hear that. See, white people see, this is that white privilege talk. That's what this is, y'all. This is white privilege talk, Caucasian privilege talk. This is that Caucasian privilege talk. We need healing as just as much as you need healing. No, the hell you don't. Y'all need to be punished.
That must be addressed. And so to me, my interest in this is my interest in the healing of America. It's not some, it's an injustice. It's an economic injustice. So, and the economic injustice in this particular.
So this is the type of lady who will turn around and say, it's just as much an injustice to white people as it was to Black people. See, this is that type of lady who gonna say it was just as much an injustice to white people as it was to Black people, and they sitting up on a mountain of gold. You see, y'all, because most of them feel like they haven't done anything wrong to the exactly. That's where that's coming from. Exactly, Pam. Exactly. See, I don't trust my enemies when they start talking about, you know what? I know I killed your mama, but you know what? It hurted me just as much as it hurt you. You know, when you was a little boy and your mama used to whoop you and she said, it's going to hurt me as much as it hurt you. Now, you know, your mother was lying. Now, you didn't know it when you was a child, but now you look back on it and you know she was lying. Especially if you got beat like I got beat. The way my parents beat me, and I'm talking about beat to the point of abuse. I know I know my mama was lying. Hit me in the head with a hammer, hit me in the head with chairs, bottles, cutting my skull, putting irons in my face. Oh, this is gonna hurt me more than it hurt you. You a damn lie. Stop telling that damn lie. And I've never told my children that. I've never told my children it's gonna hurt me more than it hurt you. That's the damn lie that the slave masters used to tell our great-great-great-grandmama. And niggas still teaching that stuff to their children. It's gonna hurt me more than it hurts you. Stop it. Stop it. Just stop lying, y'all. Please. It's gonna hurt me more than it hurt you. And your mama hit you, just got through hitting you in the head with a hammer. Please, putting you in an oven and turning on the fire, turning on the gas. But she's outside the oven saying it's gonna hurt me more than it hurt you. Please, no, stop it. That's some slave nigger stuff.
Is perpetrated against Black people. Now, there are other areas of with Native Americans or whatever. There are many areas of injustice that must be addressed. But in terms of America moving forward, this is something that is keeping all of us back, I believe, until we address it in a fundamental way.
Yvette, one thing I wanted you to speak to is can you speak to how those things in our agenda are actually components of how we see reparations being actually released and actually?
Well, everything in our agenda, when we talk about mass incarceration, when we talk about historically Black colleges, when we even talk about lineage therapy in terms of what has to happen and what is, and what we have to deal with in a very specific way. These are very specific things in terms of, the cost is expressed of slavery and redlining and
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it came from slave masters. That's where Black people get all their little stuff. From our enemies. When I got older, I understood where my parents got that from. They got it from their parents, who got it from their parents, who were slaves and sharecroppers. And Massa used to say it's gonna hurt me more than it hurt you. Why? Because we were property. They would chop off your hands and they say it's gonna hurt me more than it's gonna hurt you. Why? Because there was going to be less productivity. So yeah, that's why slave masters taught that. And so our parents carried that garbage on. No, that's some little slave nigger stuff that we learned that we need to really let go. Teaching your kids, you whooping your kids, punishing your kids, and you telling them, oh, it's going to hurt me more than that hurts you. We don't even know where we got that from. But I know now where we get it from. I have to come to the conclusion that the only way they will succumb and put up the reparation is that they are in captivity. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Just like in Egypt, the nation was broken before they gave us reparations. That's what's going to have to happen to America. Because this lady right now is talking too pride. She's talking too proud. She's talking out of a place of security and preference. She's not talking about, she's not talking out of a need of emergency and righteousness. She's not talking out of that. She's not talking with that voice. She's talking out of a place of privilege and preference. This is just something she prefers to do. But she don't have to, see. But see, the Most High put you in a position where you got to do it.
Construction and benign neglect of not just Republicans, but the Democratic Party as well. We talked about how all of that expresses itself in the racial wealth gap. And I just want to be clear about one thing. There are a lot of abused and disenfranchised groups in America. I think we can all agree on that. But there's only one group, and I like to have specificity here because I don't want us to talk about American DOS in terms of the people of color. Yeah. There's only one group that built this country, chattel slavery, right? And unsustained and unrelenting oppression for 400 years. So I like to have a very specific conversation about that group, not because you did this, but I'm saying that I don't want us to get caught up in this area where, there's something that white people tend to do by throwing us all in the people of color.
No, I'm with you. I would feel the same way. I totally understand that, and I have spoken to that publicly. I hope you know. Listen, guys, if the miracle, people say you're such a long shot, and I said, well, Trump is president. If I am ever president of the United States, I invite you now. We're going to have a weekend at Camp David. And I invite both of you, and we will decide who should be invited. And I look forward to really talking this through from early in the morning to late in the evening and really getting down. And it thrills me as an American to think that there would be an American president who would say, okay, let's sit down, let's have this conversation, let's do this. Let's take every little piece, let's talk it out and come up with something beautiful for America.
Now, I like the gesture. I like that gesture. So y'all, I'm not just against her just because she's white. I can recognize a good gesture, but remember, it's just a gesture. Hello, it's just a gesture. It's just a promise. The proof is in the pudding. I do have to say, I appreciate that gesture that she just did. But far as I'm concerned right now, it's just symbolic. But it is a good gesture. And the reason why it's a good gesture to me, because the gesture is very specific. Now, there is a concern that I have. Who she's inviting? She's inviting Antonio Moore and Yvette Carnell to Camp David. Now, Yvette Carnell is a lesbian. I don't know what Antonio Moore is. I really don't. I have no clue. All I know is he's not married. I feel real uncomfortable when people who I don't know what their sexual orientation is and their status is representing me. That's not something I feel comfortable with. And I'm not trying to make this more difficult than it already is by piling on other layers of things that muddy the water. I don't want to muddy the water with religion, Bible belief, and stuff like that. This is a step in the right direction. She said she will invite them to Camp David. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And I think that's a nice gesture. I think that's a nice gesture. Okay? Because although I don't know what the sexual orientation of Antonio Moore is, and I do know the sexual orientation of Yvette Carnell is, they are still more in my neighborhood as it relates to representing our people, even though they're not Israelites, than any other group of people that I know. I mean, I've subscribed to both of their YouTube channels. So I appreciate Marianne Williamson making that overture. I do appreciate that. So that does get my attention. And for that reason, she is a very interesting candidate for the nomination of the Democratic Party. I appreciate that. We're going to see where it goes.
That's it thrills me to think that day could happen. And for that matter, whether it was me or anyone else. But if it's me,
yeah,
the invite is there.
And let me say something. We have a conference October 4th in Louisville, Kentucky, the ADOS conference. We'd like to invite you to come out and be part of that conference and possibly speak to the audience. We definitely look forward to having 1,000, if not more, people in the audience and hear from you and any other presidential candidates about your campaign and your policy promises to Black America specifically. And let me say, I also appreciate you tabling reparations.
I'm glad he said specifically. I'm glad he doubled down by saying specifically. Us and not nobody else.
Throwing it into the middle of this discussion as it needed to be. And now everybody's talking about it. Now, I'm not saying that you yourself are the individual cause of that. That's as a result of all the people that are in my chat, all the people on Twitter using ADOS, Yvette Carnell, myself, Sandy Darity, Tariq Nasheed, so many other people that have been pushing to make sure that this discussion gets tabled, but you definitely caused quite a storm when you announced and said that I want to make sure that reparations is given, even though the amount was low.
Okay.
So you gonna get tagged for that. So let me say this: we've recently, as we move towards the end of this, we ourselves, ADOS, has recently dealt with something that was covered by The Intercept over there. They do great work, and this accusation of Russian bots. You know, we're gonna do some McCarthyism. Dr. King dealt with this with the Montgomery bus boycott. This minimalization of your voice because it doesn't fit the narrative of what we need to be said. Have you experienced that? And also, can you relate to what we've been going through if you're familiar?
Well, the ego mind is very sly. And sometimes there is externalized oppression, injustice, and unfairness, such as you're describing with bots. But the deeper injustice is in our minds. So what I see with my own candidacy, for instance, I'm not as so worried about Russian bots as I'm worried about a mainstream viewpoint that has the audacity to say that only a certain kind of experience and a certain kind of political establishment cred is enough to be seriously considered for president. That's in our minds. So where I feel none of this would hold the power to hold us back, whether it's bots or attitudes, is if there's enough activation within us. You know, Martin Luther King said there's a power in us greater than the power of bullets. There's a power in us greater than the power of bots. There's a power in us greater than the power of narrow-minded thinking. And I believe that it's been the slumber of the American spirit that is most needs to be addressed.
I don't like all that mumbo jumbo talk. I don't like all of that. I don't like all that mumbo jumbo talk. You know, I don't like all that mumbo jumbo talk about the power of love, stop bullets, and all that stuff. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that kind of talk from a group of people that's been shooting us. You know, it's the power. I don't want to hear one of our enemies say, it's the Martin Luther King said it's the power of love that stopped bullets. And guess what? They got all the guns. I don't want to hear that. You can stop that, please. You can stop all that. I don't want to hear nothing about that. It's the power of love that stopped bullets, and you got all the guns and all the ammo. No.
Right now. And that's why conversations like this matter to me. They're all just part of an awakening, you know, whether a neighbor.
It's the power of love that stopped bullets, and you're shooting at me. But you're quoting Martin Luther King. Okay, no. We're not going to go there. We're not going to go there.
Or an individual, you awaken one aha at a time.
Man, Yvette, look, is there anything you want to ask as we start moving towards the end of this discussion, specifically to Ms. Williamson?
Well, no, I don't think there's anything I want to ask, but I think I don't want to be too forward, but I would give a word of caution and a word of advice, I guess I would call it. There is, Antonio and I have had to learn a lot, and we have had to do a lot of research, and not even any of the other candidates are doing. And you see that from Kamala Harris' interview with the Breakfast Club. You see that from the people who interviewed her at the Breakfast Club. And so I would tell you that the thing that is going to insulate you from some of the attacks that you are going to endure going forward is to have the data. And that's
is to what? I'm sorry?
Have the data. Have the data.
Well, if there's data that I need that I do not have, I hope that you will show it to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's that's our role. Sandy Darity, Dark Hamilton, all of the great researchers that are out there. And I think that one of the things that's going on right now is that we weren't told what America was appropriately. I mean, historically, and then also present day, we were told that America is much more fair and much more open and much more like equitable than it is.
Well, we aspire to be, and the fact that there is such a gap between the principles on which we purport to stand and certain areas such as race where we are not living those principles, it seems to me is the job of every generation. It's our job to close that gap, and that's what I think everybody on this call wants to do.
Any last thing you want to say to the Tone Talks audience and the Dash Radio audience out there?
Just thank you for having me, and I look forward to further conversation. And I look forward to the day. I will be honored if that day comes when we can really get down and make something happen.
And there was something else you were trying to have done because you were trying to get to the debate stage. Anything you want to tell us?
Thank you very, very much. Yes, the DNC rules say that in order for me to make it into the debates, I have to have 65,000 individual contributors, as well as at least 200 from 20 states. I have at least 200 from 15 states. But so I'm feeling pretty good about getting to that. But that issue of small contributors, even if someone gives $2, then that counts as a contributor. So if anybody feels that my campaign and my candidacy is, you want to see this on the debate stage, then I hope that people will go to Marianne2020.com and donate as they see fit.
And Yvette Carnell, where can they find you?
Mondays and Wednesdays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, YouTube, Breaking Brown Live. And I want to thank Ms. Williamson for just coming on, having this conversation, because this is a conversation that needs to happen. It's going to be a long road, but I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you.
And this is Antonio Moore, Tone Talks. I'll be back on at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time today. My regular time, I have Dr. Tommy Curry on, and we're going to have a great discussion about Jussie Smollett. Thank you so much for tuning in. See you guys soon.
Okay, for this interview, I have to give Antonio Moore, I would have to give him a C+. Yvette Carnell, I'm going to have to give her a D. She was pretty quiet. Now, I understand that it's his show, but she was the co-host. She didn't really go in like she be doing on her show. So I would have to give her a D and give him I'm going to give him a C, not a C+, a C. I think he could have been a little more. You can tell me he don't read right, but her bull, he knows right where she's coming from, what she's about, and who she's about. I hate it when people think they can talk to you twisted. Exactly. Exactly. But anyway, y'all, I just wanted to come on here. I knew that this wasn't going to have a lot of people here today, but I wanted to deal with this presidential candidate, Marianne Williamson. You know, I think she do a lot of too much mumbo jumbo spiritual talk, you know, instead of just getting to the real issues, you know, especially when she say stuff like, you know, love stops bullets and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to hear that when you got all the guns. You make all the gun laws. You arrest us for having guns, for having a gun card. You kill us like they did with Orlando Castile. So I don't want to hear nothing about that. You know, I don't want to hear you quoting Martin Luther King and you got a gun at me, aimed at me, and you're shooting. And you're talking about love stop bullets. And I don't want to hear that. But anyway, y'all take it easy. I just wanted to go over this. It took a long time, but that's okay. This is Prophet Ro A Nabi, family prophet to the angel of the church of the Laodiceans, to who are Israelites. And I hope you enjoyed this. And I hope you see what kind of people we're really dealing with in this Marianne Williamson. You know, they really don't relate to us. They really don't. Several times when he brought up issues that deal directly with us, she started talking about all other people, white people. Specifically, she started talking about white people. She didn't even mention other quote unquote minorities. She directly mentioned white people. And I noticed how Antonio Moore didn't call her on that. Or Yvette Carnell. They was real quiet. But if you watch their regular program, they got a whole lot to say. Now, I got to give props to Antonio Moore. He did go in a little bit. He did. He did go in a little bit. He did. But I don't know what happened to Yvette Carnell. It was like she like a fly on the wall. People like her won over a lot of our people. Oh yeah, I could see her winning over a lot of our people. You know, I could see her winning over a whole lot of our people because she's gonna start the conversation with reparations. So that's gonna make Black people perk up anyway. When they hear they're gonna get a whole, they're gonna get the bag. Black people going to like, I don't even know what she's talking about, but she is talking about a bag. So giving us some kind of bag. So, you know, and that's the bad part about it. I mean, look at how we got Obama, and he wasn't even talking about giving us the bag. He wasn't even talking about the bag. And look, 95% of us voted for him. So how many Black people you think gonna vote for a white woman that's talking about giving us the bag? Please. You're gonna hear people in the middle of the street screaming this lady's name. Marianne Williamson, Marianne Williamson, Marianne Williamson, Remain, just like they were saying, Obama, Obama. Obama wasn't even talking about giving us the bag. And 95% of Black people voted for him. So Black people about to lose their mind over this white woman. But anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Y'all have a wonderful evening. I hope you enjoyed this telecast. Got two fingers crossed behind my back. Y'all take it easy. I'm out of here. Shalom.